it's moved on today as well. Rishi Sunak yesterday suggested the Labour Party are on the same side as criminals and lawyers who promote illegal immigration. This is essentially him claiming that Labour is on the side of corrupt lawyers and criminal gangs. Labour very unhappy about this and actually has hit back. And I just wonder whether this is about Rishi Sunak realising that immigration is going to be one of the biggest electoral issues as we come into the general election. He's been told to sort of up his game and stop being, I think Russell's point was a good one, stop being a middle manager in a bank and actually show some I know, chutzpah, I suppose. Joining us now, Stephen Woolfe, Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. Good morning, Stephen.
Morning, David.
What did you make of this? Because it seems rather extraordinary. I mean, obviously the government's made a lot of the fact they got the illegal migration bill through. Many in the Labour Party opposed to that. We then had this massive story yesterday in the Mail about people falsifying their claims, paying 10 grand. They get doctor's appointments falsified, doctor's letters falsified. They also then claim they've been victims of all sorts of trafficking, sexual abuse, exploitation and so on. Rishi Sunak coming out fighting.
Well, it's certainly the case that Rishi Sunak and his team now feel that they have a strong opportunity following the Daily Mail investigation to attack those who are opposing his immigration law changes. And he knows that he's got the public on his side in supporting clamping down on illegal migration and clamping down on people smugglers, and now being able to clamp down on lawyers who have been representing individuals in a false way. And he sees this now as a very good opportunity to go for the Labour Party. And that's why he's using much more stronger and robust language.
So it's extraordinary that now it's escalated still further. Of course, the Labour Party absolutely livid about those accusations. But the Bar Council then also basically attacked Rishi Sunak on the back of this. And just in terms of the Bar Council, they represent barristers. They have opposed the government's illegal migration bill, but obviously very unhappy about the fact that Rishi Sunak is attacking lawyers. But clearly the Mail has a story. We know it's going on. We know there are falsified claims, and the Mail has uncovered it.
Yes, the Mail has very much uncovered a very strong and important case. The people have been mentioning for years that there are those lawyers who are actually going beyond their remit of either being a solicitor or a barrister to actually represent their clients when they have genuine cases to actually be represented by, but actually enhancing it by giving them false information or false assistance, as we saw in this investigation. I think as an immigration barrister myself, I have some kind of, I suppose, support for the chairman of the Bar Council when he says that it's not all lawyers that are involved in this. Certainly they're not.
But I don't think anyone was suggesting that, were they?
No, and I agree with that. But where he is wrong is to attack the Prime Minister for going after those who are indeed breaking the law or breaking the solicitors' regulations, or even if the Bar Council, if these people happen to be members of the bar. It's also very clear that the public now are beginning, and have done for a long time, and it's not Rishi Sunak's fault for this, it's actually lawyers themselves who always seem to be representing those who are opposing what the public believe is a genuine case. We saw that during the military cases where we had a law firm that actually was making money out of challenging soldiers who'd been fighting in Afghanistan and representing people falsely with claims of abuse. And so rather than attacking those lawyers, which is what he should be doing, it seems to be turning more into a political match, and that's not what the Bar Council should be doing.
No, absolutely right. But also the Bar Council should be doing its job, shouldn't it? Those lawyers are acting... It's fraud, basically. It's fraud. If you know that someone is guilty and this is not an accurate representation of themselves, if they're falsifying their claims, then the lawyers have a duty of care not to act in their defence.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's very important for the Bar Council and the Solicitors Regulation Authority to come out and strongly condemn any lawyer that attempts to break the rules just to represent their clients in these ways. And that would be, for me, a more appropriate response, rather than getting into the alleys of political fighting and turning this into a battle, which all it will do is it will make the public look upon lawyers now as being more a political animal rather than a legal animal. There is a space for politics, and that's being in the political sphere. And of course, the deputy chairman of the Bar Council stood for Labour twice. And
well,
that's
I'm glad you brought that up. This is Sam Townend, KC, vice chairman of the Bar Council. He criticised the Prime Minister's response. And as you rightly said, he accused Rishi Sunak of playing politics for condemning these lawyers, but he stood twice to be a Labour MP. So, as you say, there's a time and a place for politics. If you want to be a politician, go into politics.
Absolutely, and I did exactly that during my time. I entered the world of politics, and now I'm in the world of law again. And there is a very clear point where you have to try and draw a fine line. There are lots of bright lawyers who've represented people successfully. We know that throughout history. We look at those who've championed freedom across the world, and they've been involved as lawyers. And I think it's a very important point that this is not an attack on all lawyers, because they're not all criminals like these individuals are within the investigation. But it's important for the Bar Council to draw a very fine line between that. And I represent those who believe that law is an important part of our nation, should be respected, but we shouldn't be drawn into the world of politics.
Stephen, thank you for your time. Stephen Woolfe there, Centre for Migration and Economic Prosperity. I mean, that's the point, isn't it? The Bar Council now leaping to the defence of lawyers, and actually people literally around the country thinking, what on earth are these rogue lawyers doing? And actually someone's just messaged me, surely, David, Brian in Norfolk, good morning. Brian says the lawyers and doctors who are falsifying these claims should be prosecuted for perverting the course of justice.
Yes, absolutely they should. And no one's suggesting it is all lawyers. Of course, that would be a silly assertion. This might be 1% of lawyers or 10% of lawyers. That doesn't matter. The fact is there is an element that has been uncovered by the Daily Mail that are up to no good and are effectively fueling fibs, lies and deceit to enable people to make incorrect and inappropriate claims to stay in this country. Now, there's obviously a political element to it, and that's why Rishi Sunak has come out and kind of said that Labour is complicit here, particularly as the Labour Party, of course, have repeatedly voted against the government's moves to try and toughen up on immigration and the rules and laws around that. But it's very, very concerning that, I mean, particularly this individual, Sam Townend, as you say, has stood as a Labour candidate twice, obviously he's a card-carrying member of the Labour Party, should almost kind of try and pretend that this problem isn't happening. And of course, we know what happens when institutions, when organisations avoid culpability and try to pretend something's not happening. Of course, then there's a lack of scrutiny and the problem doesn't get solved. I think Sam Townend needs to consider his position, don't you, as Vice Chairman of the Bar Council?
There's a lot of that going on this morning, isn't it? A lot of people considering their position.
Well, but at least, the CEO of NatWest, Dame Alice, has had the good grace to go rather quickly, I think. I think there is some credit, a tiny bit of credit due there, I think.
A tiny bit. We'll talk more about that after this break. Russell, thank you very much indeed for the moment. It is now time for a break. After the break, we'll talk more about the Nigel Farage banking scandal. We'll also talk about the Windsor frame doesn't work, something I've been saying for a very long time. We'll also talk about Labour and their plan now to drop the self-ID pledge so people can't self-identify as being trans. This is TalkTV.